Okay, so this is Edward, and I'm conducting an oral history interview with Byron. The interview is being conducted on Hopper Academy in Sanford, Florida, United States, starting October 15, 2022. So, how was your life here in Georgetown?
It was great. I've actually lived in two different communities within Georgetown. I would say two different homes. So from 0 to 7. Yeah, from 0 to the age of 7, I lived on 7th Street, so 7th and Bay Avenue. And then from 7 until 20, I lived 6th Street, 6th and Hickory. And it's a great upbringing. You know, actually I was a part of the inaugural kindergarten class at Hamilton when it opened in 1984. And so in that class, we still connected with a lot of those guys. We grew up, and also we graduated from high school together, Seminole High School in 97. But yeah, Georgetown, you know, the church, Hickory Avenue Church of God, in the neighborhood. My grandparents lived on 819 8th Street, and my aunt actually lives where I grew up in the first 7 years of my life. So the family was there, you know, going to school was there. It wasn't until I left and went to middle school, where I went to Sanford Middle and to Croon's Academy, where I actually went to school outside of the neighborhood. Other than that, it was everything happened here in Georgetown.
So you were talking about church, right? So how was Sundays like for you here in Georgetown with church?
Yeah, Sunday started early and ended late. You know, so we would start Sunday school at 9 o'clock in the morning at Hickory Avenue Church of God. Service would end maybe around 1:30, 2 o'clock. Come home and eat, and then Sunday service started again roughly around 5:30, 6 o'clock for evening service. Or maybe there was another group, another church from out of town would come in town. So Sundays were all day church. But at the end of the day, though, it was great because it kept us out of trouble. It kept us engaged, and always things for us, for the young kids to do. So we were either in choir, or we were part of different groups within the church. We were practicing for teen talent and things like that. So it was its own community center, if you will, within the church, when the community in itself may not have had a community center. The church was our community center. So not only Sundays, but throughout the week, we'd be at the church.
Okay. Did you participate in any of those activities in the community center? Like you mentioned choir and stuff like that?
When I got into high school, I was pretty active in the choir. And so I was the choir director at my church, and then also at Seminole High School Gospel Choir. I was the president of the choir. So during those years, that was a big deal for us. We would travel around, and you know, and not only so if it was either traveling around with the gospel choir at school, but then our church choir would go around to different churches, and we'd have anniversary services and things like that. We had a youth choir, and we had a mass choir, and I was in both. so the choir played a big role in my upbringing in church.
Okay. I know here in Georgetown there's a lot of businesses. Do you remember any of them when you were growing up?
I can tell you, so I just moved back to Florida, and the businesses that we see here now were not there. It was during that, and I would say roughly, you know, in the 80s and 90s, a lot of the businesses that were there for a long time, but there wasn't a booming business down as you see now on Sanford Avenue. You know, one of my cousins had a barber shop on Sanford Avenue, so we would go down there and get a haircut on Sanford Avenue in the 80s and 90s. And there were some antique shops and things like that. We used to go to also on Sanford Avenue, Billy Boys, which was the ice cream and hot dog place, and we'd go down there. Those were some of the local businesses, which is now where the post office is. That used to be more of an ice cream shop. Winn-Dixie used to be there. That's where we did our grocery shopping. But the booming businesses that you see down there now, it definitely was not the case 30 or 40 years ago. Now I will say, we spent a lot of time at the park, Lake Monroe, Fort Mellon Park, which is where I played Little League baseball, and that was really the gathering spot for the youth, who were playing in those games, or even just going to watch, the neighborhood guys play against each other. That was a big part of our upbringing, Little League baseball, and that, and so that was. They don't have that now. Those baseball fields are now on the other side of town, but that was definitely the attraction, and basketball tournaments down there as well.
Mm-hmm. Can you expand a bit on the basketball tournaments you just mentioned?
Yeah, and when I say tournaments, I should say these were kind of like, round up the guys we're gonna play. So, 3-on-3, and pick your team right there on the spot kind of thing. But it ended up to be all-day tournaments, if you will. The team that would actually play, and whoever kept winning would win, would play until the last one. And you'd have the local guys betting money on on the games and things like that. But that was a big part of that community, where you'd have baseball happening. And if you go a little further out, there was the softball field. So the softball field was there, the Little League baseball, the park, and then basketball activities were going on as well. So it was just kind of the gathering spot. But definitely on a day like this, Saturdays and Sundays, it was guaranteed some type of activity and pickup games were happening in that area. Also, in more specific to Georgetown, the park on 8th Street, which is right across the street from my grandmother's house, 8th and I can't think of it right now. 8th and Orange. That was also another basketball where you have a lot of pickup games happening right there. I don't even know if they still have a basketball course there anymore, but back in those days, that was definitely pickup basketball games on that Orange, 8th Street, 8th and Orange playground.
Okay. How were your parents when you were growing up in Georgetown? How was your family like?
Yeah, so my mom grew up also in Georgetown. So she stayed in the same community she was raised in. My dad's from Dublin, Georgia, so he moved into the neighborhood, but it was at the end of the day, it was just not only my parents, but cousins, aunts, grandparents. Everyone basically lived in Georgetown, and if not in Georgetown, then it was maybe like Washington Oaks, which is another predominantly black community in the city. But yeah, we were all here. My mom went to this school for elementary school, so by the time I was born, they'd already started a new elementary school. But this place has been more of a marker for our family, for generations.
I know you mentioned your grandmother. She was living closer to the parks. How was her? How was she?
Yeah, so my grandmother, my grandfather's from Sanford. My grandmother's also from Dublin, Georgia, so it's another story, honestly. My dad's from Dublin, Georgia. My grandmother, my mom's side is from Dublin, Georgia. But they ended up here, which is that's probably worth talking about. My grandmother's aunt is from Dublin, Georgia, but she had a sharecropping business where my dad was one of the workers that worked with her, and they would go up and down the East Coast, and that's how my mom met my dad through that family connection. But she also lived in Georgetown as well, just up the street on 7th Street, going closer toward Mellonwood. So, which is my great aunt, and she was also very involved in the church as well, Hickory Avenue Church of God, and helping to build out that ministry as well. So, but a lot of it again happened right here in Georgetown.
What was it like going to school in Georgetown?
It was interesting. We walked to school, and so it was, you can imagine, so I lived right down the street, and we walked roughly about a mile to Hamilton Elementary. So everyone, all the kids who lived in the houses leading up to Hamilton, it was one big community, if you will, so, but we saw it all at the same time, so we'd have races, and we'd race up and down the street, but then you also had fights, things like that with just community kids, growing up in elementary school. It was a lot of athletes in this area, I think it may just be, Florida just being kind of a year-round warm place. You're outside most of the time, and just some of the greatest athletes you can find. We would play pick up and run football right out here, and then what's the interesting part about that though, a lot of those same kids didn't make it to high school. So it's interesting because you could tell the difference between the kids who had mom and dad, grandparents, and their influence on those kids, and the others who didn't, right? And the ones who didn't, they were in many ways fending for themselves to try to get through school, get through from elementary to middle, and some of them never made it to high school, just didn't stop going to school. So, which is kind of more of a reflection of just the socioeconomics of, the communities, if you will. And so, even when I think back, it still was a great experience. I would not have changed it for the world, because it really helped shape, my thoughts and views on, not only just predominantly black community, but as we went across in other neighborhoods, and even we live in Baltimore, Maryland, which is, you'll see much more densely populated urban communities, which is unlike anything that we're seeing here. But it does help you kind of better understand the various aspects of community and economics as well. So,
you mentioned a lot of sports, a lot of athletes in your school. Were you part of any teams or like any sports teams from?
So I played baseball, Little League to Junior League, which was basically when we were in middle school, and it's all rec league through the city of Sanford. And that was a big deal for us. I mean, it was, if you were good, you made all-stars, and if you made all-stars, you traveled, you got a chance to go to other states. If you were really good, you got a chance to go to other states, but we'd go to other counties. And then when I got to middle school, my brother is 4 years older than me, but he was a track star in high school. So I said, okay, I want to run track too. So I started running track in AAU, and that was great because it gave me a lot of exposure, just to see other states and compete at a high level. And then we'll play popcorn football, practice right out here behind Hamilton. That was a big deal, and that took us up into high school, played high school football as well.
Okay. So you mentioned your brother. Do you have any other family members that grew up here?
Yeah, so I'm the youngest of four. So my oldest sister was 11 and a half years older than me. Then I have a younger sister who's 10 years older than me, and my brother's 4 years, and I'm the youngest. But yeah, we all grew up right here in the same community.
What was it growing up with such a big family here in Georgetown?
It's interesting. It was, there are gaps, right? Because actually, when you think about it, we just moved back to Sanford, and this is the first time that all of us have been in the same city since 1986. Primarily because my oldest sister, she graduated high school in '86, and then she went off to college. And I was 7 years old, so we kind of had these gaps of, from 0 to 7, we're all in the house together, and then after that, it was one kid was going to college, another kid, and so, but with that being said, the family has always been really tight and very supportive of each other throughout the years. But yeah, we definitely have different accounts, if you will, of parenting, of the kids. Oh, by the time you guys came around, they were tired and you guys were spoiled, if you will. So, but yeah, they're very close in their family.
So, how about yourself? You mentioned that your sister went to college, all your other brothers. How about you? How did you end up going to?
Yep, so I graduated high school in 1997. I did 2 years at Seminole Community College, which is now Seminole State. And then I went on and graduated from Tuskegee University in Alabama.
Okay. Do you think Georgetown set you up for being an adult, growing up, handling all these things? Do you think the community itself, being so tight knit, helped you, develop to who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, Georgetown at that time definitely was a working to middle class, predominantly black community. And so when you think about that, you saw parents getting up, going to work every day, in some form or fashion. There were other communities within Sanford where that wasn't the case. And so, we weren't wealthy or anything like that, but just the working class mindset of being able to see parents get up and go to work every day and be active in the church and coaching Little League and things like that. Those things kind of help to shape my thought process as to what I'm supposed to do when I go there. So having that type of exposure, and not just in my house, but even when I went outside and next parents that were across the street, they were doing some of the same things that we were all leaving and going to church together, and kids were playing Little League football and baseball together. It made sense. And so it definitely helped shape my thoughts as to what do I do when I leave this house and get older, the role I should play, going forward.
So, I know that what did you do after graduating from Tuskegee?
I studied finance at Tuskegee and finished in 2004. And we went right out of college, right into the world of finance, and moved to Baltimore and worked in private banking right out of college, and just continued on. So I'm a financial advisor now, so it's past 20 plus years.
Oh, is there anything that we left out in the conversation that you'd like to add?
Well, I think, it's great to be able to come to a place like this that is a museum, if you will, to be able to see not only my parents' teachers, but then even some of the people that look on the walls, and you see some of the people who are actually my teachers, people who were leaders in the community, maybe had retired by the time I'd actually started going to school, but they still were active in the community. To see them and kind of hear their stories, learn more about them, it's great to be able to have these types of institutions to tell the story as our kids come back to learn more about this community and the work and all the people who come through here, and to help build it to what it is today, and to be able to understand where it was. Our country has taken so many shifts over the past 100 years, and you think about that and say, well, what was happening in this community 100 years ago? What about 50 years ago? What about 30? And then relate that to current day and see, have we progressed, have we regressed, where are we going, that kind of thing. It's good to be able to capture the story. So that's that's the reason why I wanted to be here for that. And more importantly, I think that this community did a lot for me in helping to shape my thoughts and my mindset around things I should be doing. So we hope to see this community continue to thrive and be as supportive to the kids now as it was for me.
Good to hear. So, Byron, thank you again for sharing your time and speaking with us. This has been Edward at Hopper Academy University. Hopper Academy on October 15, 2020.
Thank you.
Thank you.